Back in Black is a thundering monster. It's AC/DC saying, well, we might have lost our frontman and our friend Bon Scott. We might be back in black, but we are back, and we're coming at you with all guns blazing. We're taking no prisoners, and that's exactly what it sounds like.
In terms of AC/DC and what had gone before, it was the phoenix rising from the ashes.
Few bands will release an album as good as Back in Black. Those that do very rarely replicate the success. They were never going to achieve again what they achieved with Back in Black.
Are there any fillers on Back in Black? I don't think there are. I think everyone's just an incredible track, and I think the album today stands up, you know, as an overall entity. You know, there's no nonsense. It's just killer, no filler.
It's one of those great moments in the history of rock music when you can, not only is there not one filler, there's not one track that dips below an absolute masterpiece standard, and that's remarkable. I don't think there's another AC/DC album that has that level of achievement. They came close, and how many bands throughout history can claim they did one album that they can never better? Even the Stones probably have never done an album that was the epitome of what and who they are. They've done albums that came close, but always the Stones are better live than they are on record. With AC/DC, Back in Black, even if they tried for the next 100 centuries, the next million years, they'll never better it. They can never have bettered what they did on that record.
Bon Scott sadly died in February 1980, and I think Brian Johnson was more or less in position by the end of March that particular year. So it was quite a quick sort of appointment as far as AC/DC were concerned. And I remember that the band being, you know, not fiercely criticised at the time, but there were a few eyebrows raised about, you know, the kind of haste in which they got in Bon's replacement.
Within 2 months, everything's done and dusted. They're down in NASA recording Back in Black. You know, so maybe they threw themselves into the thick of it very quickly just to get over the grief. You don't know, but that's a startlingly short amount of time to go from losing your figurehead and along with Angus and best loved member of the band just at the point where you're about to crack open the world market to replacing him with someone completely new and recording your next album. 2 months. That's all it was.
Back in Black was the best way they really could have dealt with the new lineup. They had to come back in a very, very different manner to Highway to Hell, and they had to get a singer who was quite the opposite to Bon, but someone who could handle the material. And with Brian Johnson's sort of archetypal, screeching, screaming, unnaturally high-pitched vocal range, they probably did better than they could have done with anybody else.
For me, Back in Black is a classic album, and I know it's supposed to be a double diamond selling album across the world, whatever that means, however many millions that is, I'm not too sure. But to me, I don't know. It's slightly irrelevant, really, to be honest with you. It doesn't really matter to me, and I'm sure it matters to AC/DC, but I don't really care whether that's sold 10 million or 10,000. To me, it is a classic album, but it's a classic album because the band created it out of tremendous adversity. And I think that the spirit of Bon Scott looms large over that album, even though he's not on the album. Obviously, Brian Johnson's singing on it, but his spirit lingers, and the band used their anger, used their emotion, used their aggression, everything that came out of his sudden, unexpected death, to create this rock monster of Back in Black.
Any pressure that was going to be applied to Back in Black was maybe dissipated slightly by the fact that, you know, the circumstances of Bon's death. So, you know, you were in a set of circumstances there where anybody would have excused them for delivering a dodgy album, but that's not the way they think. You know, once they decided to go ahead and make the album, then it was going to be the best album that they could make.
Every track on Back in Black is a classic. Every track is a killer. Every track has its own sense of perspective, a sense of belonging, and even the way they actually tracked it, the way they ordered the songs, works superbly. One of the great moments for me is Hell's Bells, though. The opening with the tolling of the bell and the mournful guitar coming in. I've always had this theory that it's almost Highway to Hell Part 2. Now, in Highway to Hell, of course, the title track of the last album with Bon Scott sings about basically going down to hell, or being on the highway to hell. Now, if you look at the lyrics for Hell's Bells, it's talking about rolling thunder, pouring rain, coming on like a hurricane, Satan's calling to you. I think, in a way, this was AC/DC's way of paying tribute to Bon Scott by taking Highway to Hell another step and almost basically saying, the guy who was rolling thunder and pouring rain was Bon. He came on like a hurricane. And Satan did call to him, Satan in the wider sense of the term, from beyond the grave, as it were. He was taken from all of us, from AC/DC fans, from the band, etc., into a different world. And I think, in a way, that was their tribute to Bon. And what a great way to open the album. Not in what way you'd expect. It wasn't a driving, dirty blues rock riff that AC/DC were always known for, and in fact is on that record elsewhere. It's very slow, it builds steadily. And to me, that is the standout track on a great record. If I had to pick one song, that would be it.
The mournful, monumental bell, which heralds the beginning of the album, is something AC/DC had never done before. It was a gimmick that they'd never employed anything before, apart from guitars. So the bell starts us off, and then we have this mournful riff. Very much a minor key riff, with Angus coming in, very laid back, very slow, not AC/DC hammering it. The slow build up, the drums, the other guitars come in. The drums kicking in is an awesome moment. So everybody's put their record on, they've come home with this new album, this Black album, Back in Black. Big moment, turn of the decade. AC/DC have got a new singer, we're all waiting to hear the new singer. So the riff comes in, the band kick in, they move into a new riff, and still nothing, and then finally this razor-edged voice comes over the mix, and it's a winner every time. Not only that, but the song itself, the speed of it, the laid-back tempo, the way that the drums sit just on the beat, just behind the beat almost, and the big chorus with the kind of wailing, banshee backing vocals. fantastic.
Hell's Bells is a great opener, not least because of the tolling bell with which it begins. That's a kind of a little tribute to Bon. And then they straight away go into the trick. So the bell keeps tolling darkly, and they've got this trick that's absolutely fantastic, whereby the guitar will start picking out the riff, and a little bit later the cymbal comes in, a little bit later the drum, and you know that at some point the whole band are going to burst in, and they do, and it's one of the most effective things AC/DC do. They'd been doing it for years before that, for way back when they were opening their set with Live Wire, and they used to do the same thing, and it was just explosive.
They used to open with Hell's Bells, which of course was a great way to open. It's a great way to open an album. Got a brand new singer, no one knows what he sounds like. They leave you hanging for a minute and a half before his vocals come in. You know, you're itching, you know. They used to open with that.
The live favourites from Back in Black have always been the obvious ones. Shook Me All Night Long, Hell's Bells, mainly because they incorporated Hell's Bell onto their stage set, and Brian Johnson ringing the bell, clanging it. And I think those two have actually become the big favourites over the years, although Back in Black itself has always been a very popular track as well. But of course, when they first performed at the time of the Back in Black album coming out, a lot of it was incorporated into the set. And I don't think AC/DC fans would mind if they turned around now and followed the example of so many bands and said, you know what, we'll do the whole of Back in Black. We'll do it in sequence on stage. I think a lot of AC/DC fans would love to see that.
As soon as Back in Black came out, they went on the road and they opened the set with Hell's Bells, and they had a giant bell on the stage, and Brian Johnson would come on and batter the bell, and that was the beginning of the mayhem. And it was a great opener, firstly because it was that just real mid-pace, sort of chorusy, typical AC/DC song that everybody could get into immediately. But the bell was really important because they were starting to play really massive places with this album. The way it took off really marked their breakthrough into America, where it went to #4 and stayed in the charts for 131 weeks. They were playing great big places. They played Castle Donington twice using Hell's Bell as their opener. And everybody could see the bell from the furthest point of whatever field they happened to be in. And it then became a kind of a symbol and a call to arms, and it was a signal that the onslaught was about to begin, really.
Shoot to Thrill, belter of a song, fantastic. Any AC/DC fans happy to hear that live. It's the way it comes in, big chord from Angus, Malcolm hitting the riff, the anticipation again, waiting for it all to kick in. Then the guitars come together with the vocals. The other thing about Shoot to Thrill is it's great in itself, but there's this unconventional ending where they're full pelt and suddenly it all stops, and then come the mellow finger-picking guitar. It's just accompanied with the tom-toms from the drums and no other guitars or bass going on at all. Malcolm comes in, by which time the guitar solo's screaming, the singer's screaming, everything's going. The drums are going mad, fantastic. Would have been all right without that ending, but that just really makes it.
Shoot to Thrill is one that often appears early in the set. Be very surprised if we hear that early in the set, because again he's having to hit such high notes that it's leaving him breathless for the rest of the set. So I mean, you know, it's you know, they're very, very good musicians. They don't brag about it, and people underestimate them because the music sounds quite simplistic, but we're not talking simple 3-chord boogie like Status Quo employ here. Very, very different, and you know, it's very, very difficult to play.
The thing about Shoot to Thrill is the riff. That's what gets people going. You might not know why it gets you going. It's the... It's a classic AC/DC anticipation riff for me, because the key is in A, but they're coming in off the key. If they carried on with those 2 chords, it wouldn't make sense, but just get back to that key. That's the moment where it's almost like the heart pounds on that beat.
I think Shoot to Thrill is really overlooked in AC/DC's repertoire. It's not one of the songs that trips off people's tongues when they talk about AC/DC and their great classics. But I think that's because with Back in Black, the nature of their following changed a little bit. It broadened. It was a much more macho crowd, in line with AC/DC becoming a much more macho group after Bon Scott died. So probably that type of bright, vigorous rock and roll wasn't maybe what everybody wanted. They wanted more of the chanting and the big sort of hearty sing-along terrace choruses and the very, very heavy metal. What do you do for money, honey? That's a great big boisterous, very simple chorus, and Brian Johnson obviously being squeezed in an uncomfortable place while he was recording it too. Those are incredible vocals.
When the first reviews came back, they did some warm-up shows in Belgium, that AC/DC had gone for a Gillan-style screamer, where perhaps they should have thought about going for a David Coverdale-like blues voice. But I mean, to be honest with you, I can't really see where else they could have gone now. I mean, I know that we've lived with Brian now longer as the frontman of AC/DC than we have with Bon, and he's just such an integral part of, his voice is such a part of what AC/DC do now, that, it's very difficult to even cast your mind back to what could have potentially been different.
From the point of view of the pressure on Brian, I mean, he's just got the best gig in the world, really. So I think he definitely felt the pressure. I think he was pretty nervous, right from the moment we all met to get on the plane to go out to Nassau. But again, because of the circumstances of the recording of that album, we were all going to one place, to a small island in the Caribbean to record it and everything. There was a sense of camaraderie that came about, and everybody was very helpful to him. The band were once they'd made that choice, they were going to do everything possible to make sure that he was able to deliver.
With What Do You Do for Money, Honey, it's got a great stop chord riff as well, which is AC/DC's forte, stop chords, which gives the bass and drums a bit of space to power ahead. That's always a great AC/DC kind of patent with the stop chords, like the same as Back in Black and Highway to Hell. It's just that power, classic AC/DC power. So for me, it is probably the most anthemic track, although not necessarily the most appealing, but it is the most anthemic for me.
It's their best sounding album to that point. It combines the raw ferocity of Power Age with a very polished sort of production sound that obviously was much more appealing to the American audience. And within that, Brian sits very comfortably with the rest of the group. He doesn't sound out of place at all. And a lot of that's down to his voice. Because of the tone of the album, that it was a band in mourning, it was a tribute to Bon Scott. as such. There's quite an ominous feel to a lot of the music that's on there, and I think that his sort of high-powered, screeching vocals fit that quite well. It adds a sort of razor's edge to the sound of the music.
Was it easy to get the vocals down? Easy is a difficult word to define in that context, because what's extraordinary about every single one of those performances is that they are right on the edge. They are absolutely Brian giving his total self to each one of those performances, and I think that excitement comes across. And so it was very, very difficult, in the respect that he just had to summon up the most incredible amount of energy for each one of those songs. But on the other hand, because Brian is such an extraordinarily strong person with an amazing sense of humour and a fantastic voice, he was the guy for the job. So from that point of view, it would have been impossible with anybody else. But it was, because it was possible, then we did it.
Giving the dog a bone might well be a little crass, but you have to remember that AC/DC were always a really filthy band. The way they got away with it before was by having Bon Scott to deliver the lyrics, because he was a master of ambiguity and a flirt and a tease, and he was great fun. Brian Johnson came along and sang all these lyrics in a very straightforward and unambiguous manner, and so various feminist types got quite upset by lyrics like that. But, they were inherently really naughty groom.
Yeah, it is a little crass, but I mean, no more crass than any other AC/DC lyrics, really, especially considering the track that's just been before, What Do You Do For Money. It's a formulaic AC/DC, it's a good riff, chugging riff, everyone comes in, bang, chorus, everyone joins in, solo. It's a real kind of formula AC/DC track. It gets everybody going. It's probably, for me, one of the more simple songs on the album. Let Me Put My Love Into You is probably one of the more interesting tracks on the album, quite overlooked. It's almost a ballad-like song for AC/DC anyway. The riff in Let Me Put My Love Into You is another minor key riff where the minor note is prominent, where you've got this kind of sad minor sounding key. It's a two-note chord riff, so you've got almost a lonely, kind of mournful sounding riff again. Then the band build the riff up and it gives it more weight, so you've got this bottom E coming in here with the drums.
Let Me Put My Love Into You. I suppose you could call it a ballad. It's certainly a fairly slow song. It's a bit of a tour de force, really. It's yet again an example of Brian not being anything other than extremely straightforward, delivering lyrics like that. It's a very good slow AC/DC song.
Well, Back in Black's an interesting one because it's actually quite an unconventional AC/DC song again, in my opinion. It's got this kind of almost rapping quality to the verse, which I don't think I've heard them do before. A fantastic riff, we all know the riff and everything, but difficult to sing along to. There's no backing vocals in the song, really. They don't really come in until after the guitar solo. When they do come in, it's perfect, just right. But yeah, it's still an anthem. Undoubtedly. As soon as you hear the first note of Back in Black, there's no doubt what you're listening to. I think the first appeal in the song is the unbelievably simple but powerful entrance. There's just the 8 counts. You hear the 8 counts and then suddenly everybody comes in unison on this big one chord. The drums, the chord hits, and then you've got this big snare, this emptiness and a big snare drum. There's something about that, it's probably primitive, but it just draws you straight in. And then the next 3 chords, it's almost like they're hammering those chords to you. It's almost a military, like a drill. There's something about that swing, I think, that brings people in. And then, of course, you've got the little... It's almost the perfect rock riff.
Back in Black is interesting. I recently read somewhere that it's the second most identifiable riff in the whole wide world, next to Paranoid by Black Sabbath. Which is quite surprising when you think about it, that people would recognise that before maybe Smoke on the Water or Layla or any of those really sort of time-worn riffs. But yeah, apparently it's the second most recognisable riff ever invented. It's a strange one, really. It's not a standard riff by any means, is it? It's a very simple riff, but it has that quirky sort of complication to it as well. And that's sort of very much the story of the song itself, which has a certain simplicity about it, but also a complication.
In those days, the method, as far as I understood it, between Angus and Malcolm, they would come up with the riffs and the frameworks of the songs, and Bon would come up with the lyrics. Certainly with Back in Black, the frameworks of the songs had been worked out and demoed a little bit. And then when we got into the studio, Mutt would then take those frameworks and we would work on the arrangement and the sound, and the arrangement would change as the sound changed, and then we'd change the sound to make sure the arrangement was reflected properly. So everything moved forward in little bits, and I quite often use it as an example of sort of a good way to produce, is that you move these things forward in the studio, you develop the song to a point where you feel it's right to take that snapshot of it, and that snapshot captures that moment of the song at, you hope, its absolute peak.
Yes, I'm back! Yes, I'm back, babe! Yes, I'm back! Yes, I'm back!
At this particular point in their career, you know, AC/DC were almost untouchable, certainly live, and equally on vinyl as far as Mutt Lange, you know, is concerned. He really brought out all that power and intensity, which is so vital to their live performance. He really brought it forward, probably for the first time in real terms, you know, in the studio and on vinyl, as we would have said in the old days.
I think that part of the reason Back in Black has such an immediacy about it is because they were all playing at the same time, and the energy that created. You know, because they are a band, when they lock together, they just rock better than anybody else can, and it seemed fairly obvious that if you can capture that on record, then you really are capturing the essence of AC/DC.
Mutt Lange actually was very clever in the studio, because he made this album sound heavy without the band actually playing in a particularly heavy manner. He had the ability to create heavy atmospheres with a minimum of overdubs, a minimum of instruments, just the regular lineup of instruments, and at the same time to make it radio friendly and to make it tuneful and to make it a metal album with fantastic mass appeal.
I think lyrically, you know, things changed a little bit in Back in Black, but then they had to, because you had a different personality delivering them, and you know, if there's a quality that Mutt has, it is that capacity for pulling all of the little bits of a band together that then create a coherence within the album.
it's all gone another level up. The quality of the songwriting's up, and that's all part of the fact they're working with a producer who's pushing them. Okay, the producer's pushing himself. He's got a much more developed and better, stronger sound than the album that's preceded it. It's a natural progression up.
Without Mutt, it would be difficult to say exactly where AC/DC would be today, because Back in Black, you know, is such a monumental album in their career. Yes, he elevated them into, you know, the realms of superstardom, but he also left a legacy behind that the band could never recreate.
I think by AC/DC standards, You Shook Me All Night Long is probably a commercial song, undoubtedly a commercial song. Its appeal, it starts in the dominant key, the dominant being the key that leads back to the main key. So, for example, the song is in the key of G, but they come in the key of D, and they leave that riff there. That introduction just played once, so you've got the... And then they come in this new key. I think that's got some impact. It's almost got a country feel to it, the riff. It's like they've taken the country song and they've heavied it up, and it's got this lilting kind of swing to it. The vocals come in on a nice kind of single line vocal. And when the chorus comes in, it's so hooky. The backing vocals are perfectly set, you know, the pitch of the backing vocals, very commercial. It's a simple 3-chord song, but I think it works superbly, as we all know.
You Shook Me All Night Long is perfectly radio friendly. It's a great AC/DC track for radio. It's very tuneful. In character, it reminds me a little bit of I Wanna Rock and Roll All Night by Kiss. It's just got that joie de vivre about it. For once, it's actually got a self-deprecating humour too, which is not so much the case throughout the rest of the album. It's bouncy, it's still nice and meaty. It's just a great, great feel-good song.
I think You Shook Me All Night Long is probably my favourite track, because it's from Back in Black, because it's a great rock song that is radio friendly. One of the more amusing anecdotes from You Shook Me All Night Long is Mutt and I presented that album to the marketing people at Atlantic Records. And I set up a big playback system in one of the boardrooms at Rockefeller Plaza in New York, and made a very special copy of the album and took it in there, got a big amplifier and cranked it up and played it. You know, there were all these marketing guys from all around the States sat there listening to it and nodding, you know, as they tend to do. And they got to the end, and the head of marketing said, "So, what do you think, guys? You know, I think You Shook Me All Night Long, when should we put that to radio?" And they're all going, "Oh, I don't know whether I'm not sure that that's the one to go with, you know."
Apparently they had started writing the album with Bon Scott before he died. I don't know which tracks in particular they had written, but there is a sort of sleight of hand about You Shook Me All Night Long that is reminiscent of Bon. I don't know if that's the case or not, but there's a self-deprecating humour about it. There's a kind of whole enjoyment about the lyrics that perhaps isn't evident on many of the other tracks on here.
It has to be said that in a nearly 35-year history, nothing is more controversial as far as AC/DC are concerned than Bon Scott's perceived or imagined role with Back in Black. Now, there are various levels. There's the mystery of, did Bon actually demo any tracks with AC/DC? That's the first one. And the other side of it, well, did Bon actually have an input into Back in Black? And the answer to that is yes, he did. And I know that because I saw a sheaf of papers on which Bon was scribbling ideas for lyrics for the album that was to be Back in Black. Now, memory can play a few tricks on you, but I'm sure I saw the line, "She told me to come, but I was already there," which is in "You Shook Me All Night Long." I'm sure I saw it. And I saw other lines in there which were to turn up on songs from the album. I am not saying Bon wrote all the lyrics. I'm not even saying he wrote close to all the lyrics. I'm saying he had an input.
I think in terms of all of the hearsay about what was written, what wasn't written, any album is a product of a period of time. Ideas develop, and a hard-working band like AC/DC, ideas are going to appear during the tour. They're going to appear, after gigs. People sitting around in the dressing room playing stuff, and what happens is any good songwriters acquire those. You find some songwriters have copious notebooks that they write everything down in, and some people just hold it in their heads, and some people use little mini tape recorders to do it. So they will have accumulated all sorts of ideas. I know that Malcolm's a great one for picking up song titles from newspaper headlines, for instance, and so all of this stuff would have been acquired over quite a longish period of time. And in that respect, it's just impossible to separate, what existed before we got there and what came out during the time that we were there. It was just, it was songwriting in its best form, and it came out good.
Have a Drink on Me and Shake a Leg, great tracks. Yeah. Especially Shake a Leg as a stormer. I think most AC/DC fans would like to see that in the set sometime. I think they've gained a kind of cult status almost amongst AC/DC fans that would like to hear them live. I mean, like with any more of the more obscure stuff. Personally, I think they're great tracks. They're up there with the rest of them. It's just perhaps they haven't got that great big hook. Have a Drink on Me, I wouldn't class among AC/DC's greatest compositions, really. It's a fairly standard AC/DC by numbers type song, and it's pretty clever because audiences will identify with the drinking theme and they'll all love that. You can imagine the masses all out in a festival field just really getting into that. But Shake a Leg is really an undervalued song, I think. It's got a real nice, lively feel about it. Again, it's got a tunefulness that harks back perhaps to the older era of AC/DC, and it's just a really good stomping rock and roll song.
The trick about AC/DC is, although the music sounds simple, it's incredibly difficult to play. And this is where a lot of people don't get this. And this is why I've got such admiration for them as musicians. It's not easy to play at all. It's very, very difficult. Their chord progressions, just the beat that they play off is very, very difficult. There are songs now that Brian will never be able to sing again just because the pitch is way too high. I mean, Shake Your Leg, which is my personal favourite song on Back in Black, only appeared in the set a couple of times, and then it was just too high for the guy to reach. Well, it's another track that comes in on a big crash together on a big bottom E chord. There's a lot of kind of heavy chords in this.
just this snare going through it, another searing vocal performance, and a great riff that comes in after that. Etc. Great chorus, backing vocals on there, I think overdubbed from the main vocalist, but a storm of a track, absolutely full speed ahead. Have a Drink on Me is more of a sing-along track for me. Great riff, another fantastic riff, bluesy. Builds up again. Great song. Yeah, I think they're great songs. Beginning of Rock and Roll Noise Pollution, you've got Brian Johnson ad-libbing, lighting a cigarette, and Angus playing a simple blues riff. Yeah. Doesn't build up, the riff carries on, he does his ad-libbing, there's a little wait, and then bang, they all come in with the riff. It's great, it's a simple, classic AC/DC really.
So come on and get your ass down here, 'cause rock and roll ain't no riddle, man. To me it makes the good sounds.
Rock and Roll Ain't Noise Pollution is a really clever way to finish the album, really, because it's all-inclusive. It is like a kind of battle cry. It's saying to people, here we are all in this together, and we know rock and roll is the most important thing in the whole wide world. And that means ever such a lot to a 14-year-old in their bedroom listening to the album. It's a rebel yell, even though they're not really protesting to anybody or about anything in particular. It sounds good, and it just has that real sort of rabble-rousing quality about it. That's a perfect final note for the album.
It's in the right place at the end of the album. I don't know if it's there on purpose, but it's like they're defending their position. They're making a statement which has been proved true. Because rock and roll has come back again, keeps coming back, it never goes away. And it's so crass what they're saying, but it's true. And this is what AC/DC is about.
Angus's guitar style is all about excitement. And I think that, it doesn't matter whether you're watching him live or you're listening to him on record. In the moment he starts playing a solo, you've got that image of him running across the stage, and doing all of the little things that he does. It's kind of like the Chuck Berry thing, You hear Chuck Berry playing, and you immediately see him duck walking across the stage. It's a whole basket of things that come together.
I think Angus is a really underrated guitar player. But the thing is that he's a marvellous guitar player because he can play blues guitar brilliantly. He can do all that swooping and sweeping. And he can play really sort of fiddly little runs, and he can just run the whole gamut of guitar playing. But he does it without being a show-off or without presenting himself as any kind of virtuoso. And he knows when to rein it in. He's not a show-off. He doesn't go on and on forever. So I think when people are watching Angus, maybe they're not necessarily watching the way he's playing his guitar. They may well be watching whatever he happens to be doing in his schoolboy uniform on the stage, up on the giant screens. But I think that probably his guitar playing has been the band's best secret.
An Angus solo, well, firstly, it's based in the blues scale. It goes back to Chuck Berry and those Little Richard and those days. That's his inspiration. So everything's based in a blues scale, but of course he's got his own style and feeling. There's a lot of double note solos on the album, where he's using blues scale notes. Rock and Roll Like Noise Pollution, for example. Lots of double note solos in there, which seem to predominate on the album. And it's well structured. The solos are structured. They come across to me like they've been thought out beforehand, which could have something to do with the producer on this, because Angus is very much a free-form, a player who likes to improvise live. And I think on this album, the solos are well thought out.
His playing is extremely explosive, and it's quite extraordinary. It really is extraordinary to watch him playing in the studio, and quite calmly sometimes sitting there and playing guitar, rocking backwards and forwards, and you're listening to him, you think, this is just amazing. It's absolutely incredible. The only other guitar player that does it for me in that context is Jeff Beck.
Any band that makes a classic, whoever they are, always faces the problem of following it up. I don't care if you're Black Sabbath, you're Led Zeppelin, you're Metallica, the Beach Boys, whoever. When you follow a masterpiece, how do you do it? Well, the answer is you don't follow. For Those About to Rock came out a year after Back in Black, or just over a year after Back in Black. And it immediately faced the problem everyone put it up against Back in Black. And when you compare the two, sadly, For Those About to Rock pales.
For Those About to Rock, it is a 3.5 out of 5 album, whereas Back in Black's a 5 out of 5 album. I think maybe they rushed into it too quickly. It did, after all, I think, came out the following year. They've done, you've got to understand, I mean, this is why bands suddenly started to take longer over, because they go out on world tours for up to 18 months. These days, and then they have to go back into the studio and then don't want to rush product out.
I think the other significant thing For Those About to Rock is that the band were under great pressure, I think, to produce a follow-up to Back in Black, but they didn't have that sort of emotional drive after Bond's death to kind of spur them on. So I think that maybe is also an element that's perhaps a little bit lacking on that particular album.
With Back in Black, there's got to be a mystical element there. The timing, the chemistry, what had gone before. The fact that the band were cooking at that point, whether Bon had died or not, they would have been cooking. They'd been together that long, they were gelling. They were like a well-oiled machine then. The emotion of losing their singer, I think, would have had a lot to do with wanting to get out there again and prove themselves. They'd been through this indecision, perhaps. The possibility of that was it, looking for singers. They found somebody. They wanted to get out there and just prove that they really could rock. It's
capturing a moment in time, and those moments that we captured on Back in Black were incredibly special moments, and I find it somewhat extraordinary actually, because quite often I find it difficult to recall those moments when I listen to albums that I've worked on. But Back in Black is one of those albums where I can be in a very kind of alien situation, and one of those tracks will come on the radio, and I can be transported instantly back to that moment of it being recorded.
No one could have predicted that Bond was going to die. No one could have, you know, you didn't know who they were going to get in. Just they had a set of great material. They played it brilliantly. They had a producer who completely understood at that point what they were about, what they should sound like, nailed the sound perfectly. You know, they were on an upward curve anyway. They had all that momentum behind them. I think they just drew on that, you know, to get themselves through over the terrible hurdle of losing Bon Scott. You know, and it all worked perfectly because it set them up with Brian. It set Brian up with the fans. You know, and they just went on to become one of the biggest rock bands in the world.
You can't necessarily define them. You can't say, oh, well, they are rock. And I made, you know, I sort of apologised for suggesting that one of their songs was a bit poppy. But the fact is that their melodies are as memorable as pop melodies, and they rock better than anybody else. And they're a bit punky on the sides, so, you know, and they're not too dirty, but they're not too clean. So they've got all these things going for them. I mean, a marketing person couldn't have thought it up better, frankly.
At the time that AC/DC came along, the big rock bands were kind of changing course or had delivered their best work already. AC/DC come along in 1980 with Back in Black, and this has just got such an energetic sense of over-the-topness about it. It's just everything that people had possibly been waiting for, certainly in America. Very, very simple but memorable riffs. That's quite hard to do. Enormous, heavy energy and just this real sort of tunefulness. Well, I hesitate to call it melodic because that makes it sound a bit spineless, which it's not, but just this real heavy tunefulness, which was absolutely perfect for America.
AC/DC are a band that rock, and it's like I said before, you know, it is very basic. They do what it says on the tin. I think I think it's easier for fans to identify with them because they really are, you know, pretty ordinary guys that just love getting on stage and playing. But what you have in AC/DC is, you know, Malcolm, I think, is the best rhythm rock guitar player in the world. Cliff is the best rock bass player in the world, and Phil Rudd is the best rock drummer in the world. And it's as simple as that, you know. And then you stick Brian on top of that, you know, the really arguably the best singer of that style in the world. And Angus is just completely and utterly unique. You know, and it's let's face it, it's a difficult thing for a lead guitar player to come along and be unique. You know, there's only so many notes that get played, but he has a unique style, he has a unique way, a unique sound, and a unique delivery. And you put all of those components together, it's going to win every single time. I think the biggest problem they face now is if they're going to stop, how?
This is Back in Black.